like to welcome everybody to the Rabbi's Talmud class. This is the one for May, I believe. And before we start, I'd like to point out, as usual, that the class is sponsored by the Susser Foundation, the Skiba family, the Sheeran family, and in memory of Libby and Harold Grill. And please mute yourselves if you're not actively asking or answering a question or reading something.
Thank you so much, Keith. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So tonight we will study about Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer just happened this past Sunday, actually Saturday night and Sunday. It was Memorial Day weekend here. So it was, there was not so much space for thinking of Lag BaOmer. People were more concerned about beach clubs and swimming pools opening again, right? Resuming their activities, their end of spring / summer activities. And but I think Lag BaOmer is a fascinating holiday, and there are beautiful legends connected to Lag BaOmer, to the holiday. And one legend in particular strikes me, and it's a longer story, so I chose to concentrate on that one particular story. And as you will see with me, it's full of meaning. So we will read that story together, paragraph by paragraph, and I will stop several times because I need to make some clarifications or to catch your attention to specific parts of the text. And I'm talking about the famous, maybe famous not for everyone, story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the years he spent with his son inside a cave, hiding from the Romans. So we will see that story from the very beginning. Then we will read about the years inside the cave, how they survived. And finally, we will see what happens when they leave. What happens when they leave the cave for the first time, and then what happens when they leave the cave for the second time. It's a fascinating story. I really think it is, with deep meanings. So let me share with you. Okay, I think we are good to start. So this is a story from the tractate of Shabbat, and we will see by the end of the story why it's located here in the tractate of Shabbat and not elsewhere. Most of the story is not connected to Shabbat necessarily, but there is a moment that Shabbat comes into consideration, and you will see when we get there. So Babylonian Talmud, Shabbat 33b. Babylonian Talmud because it's not the Israeli Talmud. There are two Talmuds. There are two. One is the Babylonian and one is the Israeli or Yerushalmi from Jerusalem. So because one is a compilation of the conversation of the rabbis of Babylonia, and the other is the rabbis from Eretz Israel. So Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon were sitting. Were sitting means they were chatting, they were maybe drinking, they were maybe having some food together, but there was a conversation going on among those three rabbis, Rabbi Yehuda, Yossi, and Shimon. And Yehuda, a fourth person, not a rabbi, a fourth person, son of converts, sat beside them. And in a short while, we will see why was it important to see that Yehuda is a son of converts, because it should catch our attention right here in the beginning. We should not remember or remind someone that he or she is descendant of converts. It's forbidden, because once a person convert into Judaism, he or she becomes Jewish 100%. There is no difference between one who was born Jewish and one who has converted into Judaism. In terms of halakha, they are both obligated to the same things, and reminding someone that he or she is a son of convert can be shameful, can be a source of prejudice. So it's not a good stuff to remind someone that they are a convert. So we will soon see why this is appearing here, and it's not for a good reason. So Rabbi Yehuda, the first rabbi that we mentioned three rabbis. Rabbi Yehuda opened and said, "How pleasant are the actions of this nation." So he is speaking positively about the Romans. He's speaking good stuff about the Romans. The Romans, as they established marketplaces, established bridges, and established bath houses. So Yehuda starts the conversation, Rabbi Yehuda starts the conversation, say how great are the Romans, because they have really built beautiful stuff, important things, and enhanced our cities by establishing marketplaces, bridges, and bathhouses. Rabbi Yossi was silent, did not react to this affirmation made by Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, our main character here, the one that I want you to concentrate on, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, or Shimon ben Yochai, which is the same thing, responded and said, everything that they established only for their own purposes. They established marketplaces to place prostitutes in them, bath houses to pamper themselves, and bridges to collect taxes from all who pass over them. So if Rabbi Yehuda is saying beautiful things about the Romans, and Rabbi Yossi is silent, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai is criticizing the Romans and saying everything they did, they look so beautiful, actually they did for their own purposes, for bad things, for prostitutes, to pamper themselves, or to collect taxes. Yehuda, not one of the rabbis, the son of converts, went and related their statements to his household. So he went back home, Yehuda, the son of converts, and he told his family about the conversation that he has just heard. He told his wife, he told his children about the conversation. He overheard the conversation of the three rabbis. So went and related their statements to his household, and those statements continued to spread until they were heard by the monarchy. They ruled and said, the monarchs ruled and said, Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda, who exalted us, shall be exalted. So this rabbi that said beautiful things about the Romans, who exalted the Romans, shall be exalted. Yossi, who remained silent, shall be exiled to the city of Tzipori. So to be silent in such a conversation, it's not a good thing. And he will be punished. He will be exiled to the city of Tzipori. And finally, Shimon, who denounced the government, shall be killed. So the one who said positive things shall be exalted. The one who was silent shall be exiled to the city of Tzipori. And Shimon, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, here our main character who denounced the government, shall be killed. Let's stop here for a brief moment. Let me stop sharing, and we will get back to the text soon. Why do you think that Yehuda, that his condition as son of converts was reminded here? What's your opinion? Is he the hero of this story, or no, right? He's not the hero. He is the one who goes and tells the king what the Jews are talking about them, tells the Romans what the rabbis are talking about them. He betrays the rabbis, right? And here, unfortunately, is the text is picturing a very negative image of the converts, saying you should never trust those converts because they convert, but they use it as a mean to get closer to the Jews. And when it becomes dangerous to be Jewish, they betray Judaism, they betray the rabbis. So here is a very unfortunate and negative image of conversion. We will see across the different texts of the Talmud, there are many passages that converts are pictured. Some of them are very positive, and converts are considered to be even more valuable than those who were born Jewish because they chose to be Jewish. So there are passages that say very positive things about conversion to Judaism, but there are also passages like this one that suspicion is connected to conversion to Judaism. The text is telling us you should be careful with converts, because when the situation becomes dangerous, they might betray the Jews and go to the Romans, and so unfortunately it's a bad thing. But the important part of the story is that now they decided that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai shall be killed. So they want to kill Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. If there are no questions, I will go back to the text. Let me share it again.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
The city that the rabbi was exiled to, I'd never heard of that. Was that a famous city or just a bad place to be exiled to?
So Tzipori, if I'm not mistaken, it's still an Israeli city, and that was back then considered to be a city of exile. Do you remember in the Torah, a person who was a murderer, who kills someone by
So this was
accident?
one of the cities of refuge that you.
Yes, Tzipori was one of the cities of refuge. Exactly. Eilat was a city of refuge too. Yes,
A lot
Barb.
nicer. Did they have the fancy hotels then or not?
Today, not back then.
I want to say, Rabbi, I'm reading this on Safaria, and it actually says sent to the city of Sapori in the Galilee. It mentions
In
it
the north.
here. Yes, it mentions it in the on Safari.
And if I'm not mistaken, Tzipori is still a city with the same name.
Sipori has a magnificent tile that was excavated, and it's actually called the Mona Lisa of the Galilee or something like that. Okay, it's a beautiful. It was in a synagogue. It was beautiful.
And there is a city that
It's
they
a national.
rebuilt.
It's a national park.
Right.
In the Galilee that they excavated, and they found the synagogue and the tile work, the ceramics.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. So let me bring the text back to you. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, Rabbi Elazar, went and hid in the study hall. So the first place that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai goes with his son to hide from the Romans is the study hall, the Beit Midrash. Beit Midrash is the first place that he goes with his son. Every day, Rabbi Shimon's wife would bring them bread and a jug of water, and they would eat. So they were hiding in the Beit Midrash, and his wife would bring food to them. When the decree intensified, Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "Women are easily impressionable, and therefore there is room for concern lest the authorities torture her and she reveal our whereabouts." So they not only picture converts in a negative way, they are now picturing women in a negative way too. Because this woman that would actually risk her own life bringing food to her husband and her son does not receive a lot of trust from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, because he says women are easily impressionable. He is the one hiding from the Romans. He is in trouble, but he says that his wife might be weak and reveal his whereabouts to the Romans. So unfortunately, first paragraph said bad things about converts, and second paragraph said bad things about women. Not a very politically correct text. Let's continue if you don't have any question or comments. They left the Beit Midrash, the house of study. They went and they hid in a cave. a miracle occurred, and a carob tree was created for them, as well as a spring of water. So they don't need the wife anymore. They don't need the woman anymore. Instead, there was a miracle, occurred a miracle, and a carob tree was created for them, as well as spring of water. So now they have food and water, and they don't need anyone to come and to bring food and water to the two of them. They would remove their clothes and sit covered in sand up to their necks. So they would do holes in the sand and put their body, their naked body, inside the sand, cover themselves up until their neck. They would study Torah all day in that manner. In that manner, meaning inside the sand, with the body inside the sand, they would study Torah every day. At time of prayer, they would dress, cover themselves, and pray. And they would again remove their clothes afterward, so that they would not become tainted. They dwelled in the cave for 12 years. So according to this legend, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son hid in a cave for 12 years. They ate from the carob tree. They drank from the spring of water. They would cover themselves with sand and will be naked inside the sand, right? Studying Torah all day, and 3 times a day, they would dress, pray, and go back to the sand to study Torah. This was their routine for 12 years. Elijah the prophet came and stood at the entrance to the cave. So Elijah is this mystic, magic figure that never died. It's like Elvis Presley, more or less. And he comes back, he returns from time to time to accomplish specific missions. According to the Talmud, he is the one who will announce the coming of the Messiah. So when Mashiach will one day arrive, first will Elijah come and say, get ready, Mashiach is coming. And then Mashiach will come. Elijah will be the one to announce the coming of the Messiah, of the Mashiach. This is the reason why we sing Eliyahu Hanavi in Pesach, and we sing Eliyahu Hanavi actually every Motzei Shabbat during Havdalah. We sing Eliyahu Hanavi because according to tradition, those are good moments for the Messiah to come, appropriate moments for the Messiah to come. So we don't sing a music to the Messiah to come. We sing Eliyahu Hanavi. We sing for Elijah to come and to announce the coming of the Messiah. The same magic figure that never died and that from time to time returns to accomplish specific missions. Elijah the prophet came and stood at the entrance of to the cave and said, in a very indirect way, who will inform Bar Yochai that the emperor died and his decree has been annulled? So instead of saying, Bar Yochai, come out of the cave. Everything is safe now. He says it in a indirect way. Who will inform Bar Yochai, Shimon Bar Yochai, the rabbi who is inside the cave, that the emperor died and his decree has been annulled. This is the way that it worked. When an emperor dies, all of his decrees are annulled. So they heard what Elijah said. The first image that they see after 12 years inside the cave, they emerged from the cave and saw people who were plowing and sowing. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, these people abandon eternal life and occupy themselves with temporary things. Every place that they directed their eyes, Rabbi Shimon and his son, was immediately burned. So what is going on here? Let's try to decipher together. Once they leave the cave, the first thing they see is people plowing and sowing, people working, right? Doing normal stuff. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said these people abandon eternal life and occupy themselves with temporary things. How do you understand this specific sentence? What is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai saying? What is eternal life and what is temporary things? Yes, Barbara.
And it says here in the Talmud on Sefaria, the eternal life of Torah study. So
Right.
Because they're not studying Torah and they're doing this plowing and sowing, I guess maybe he feels they turned away from Judaism study.
Perfect. Yes. So eternal life here is studying Torah and praying. The activities that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and his son Elazar have been doing for 12 years, studying and praying. And when he leaves the cave, he sees people occupying themselves with temporary things like plowing and sowing, and he criticizes it. Yes, Cheryl and Jeff and Cheryl.
Yes, I just think it's like him, it sounds very spoiled. It sounds like, well, I mean, I think it's important that you study and you do that, but people have to also live, and they were farming. It's not like they were dancing or drinking or doing something totally pleasurable. They were living doing a daily life thing. And it sounds very, spoiled is not the word I want, but it just sounds very uppity. And I don't know how to explain that in any other way. It just sounds very uppity of him to not accept that people should be going about and doing things, everyday things.
Arrogance.
Thank you. Arrogance. Yes.
Yes. To use a word that came before in the text, he would pamper himself in the cave, just praying and studying, and he forgot that people must work in order to eat, in order to drink, in order to survive. Normal people need to plow and to sow and need to work. So those 12 years in the cave made him a fanatic.
Yes.
A fanatic. When I read this paragraph, I think of the ultra-Orthodox in Israel that do not go to the tzava, do not go to the army. They say, I am doing my share for the state of Israel. I am devoting my time to praying and studying. I don't need to go to the army. Let the others go to the army. So he became a fanatic.
Arrogance. Arrogant, I think, is a great word.
Arrogant. Okay, arrogant. Every place that they directed their eyes immediately burned. So he was powerful in some way, and he had this power to burn things. You can always read it in a metaphoric way. A divine voice emerged and said to them, did you emerge from the cave in order to destroy my world? Return to your cave. They again went and sat there for 12 months. So first they were there for 12 years, and now they are there for 12 months. And apparently the number 12 is an important number here, because 12 represents a full cycle, right? The year has 12 months. So if you do something for 12 months, you go once to each season. You go once, you pass once through each holiday. So 12 represents a full cycle. And they were inside the cave for 12 years, and now they stay for 12 months. God sends them back to the cave. God says to them, a divine voice emerged and said, did you emerge from the cave in order to destroy my world? You are not prepared to live in my world. You are not prepared to live in a normal society, in a regular society. Go back to the cave. And they stay there for an additional 12 months. And here is almost a side comment, a footnote. The next paragraph is almost a footnote, but it became very important for the mourning loss, for the loss of mourning in Judaism. They said the judgment of the wicked in Gehenna is Gehenom in Hebrew, is hell. The judgment of the wicked in Gehenna, in hell, lasts for 12 months. A divine voice emerged and said to them, emerge from your cave. They emerged. So as a side comment, as a footnote, we learn in this story that wicked people stay in hell for 12 months. So according to mysticism, to Jewish mysticism, hell is always a temporary place. According to Jewish mysticism, hell, or Gehenna, Gehenom in Hebrew, is not a place that someone can go forever, but is a place that someone goes for maximum 12 months. And 12 months is the judgment of the wicked, meaning normal people like you and me either do not go to hell or go to hell for less time than 12 months.
Question, Rabbi.
Just a moment, just for me not to lose it. This is the reason why we say Kaddish for 11 months. This is a way to show confidence that our beloved one is not in the category of wicked. We say Kaddish for 11 months as a way to say our beloved person who passed may have done mistakes, but surely is not in the category of wicked, the worst category, for whom 12 months of Kaddish would be necessary. So we say Kaddish only for 11 months, although the mourning process lasts 12. Yes, please.
So my question
Martin.
is 12 months as we know 12 months today, or can a month be longer than a month, like in the creation of the world? The 7 days really wasn't the 24-hour period.
So the answer is we don't know what was the intention there behind the 12 months of this story. What I can say that tradition interpreted it as our 12 months, as our Hebrew 12 months. If the original intention of the story was our 12 months or different 12 months, we cannot know. But tradition read this story, interpreted this story as our 12 months.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Marty. So just a side comment here, just a footnote generated halacha, and today it became law, Jewish law of mourning, to say Kaddish for 11 months and not for 12 months. Let's continue with the story. So they are out of the cave for the second time. Everywhere that Rabbi Elazar would strike, Rabbi Shimon would heal. Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Elazar, "My son, you and I suffice for the entire world. You and I suffice for the entire world." So if you thought that the first affirmation was arrogant, what do you think about this one? My son, you and I suffice for the entire world. So the entire world does not need anyone else but you and me. Just another footnote, his wife disappeared forever. This wife disappeared forever. I hope she married again with a more respectful husband. This is my hope. But we don't listen more. We don't hear anymore about her. But here there is a small difference, despite the arrogance. They are trying to live again in this world, and they are at least healing and correcting and erasing their own wrong, the things they are doing wrong, the damage they are creating, they themselves are fixing. Before I say something general about the story, let's just read the last paragraph. This is the last paragraph. As the sun was setting on Shabbat Eve, they saw an elderly man who was holding 2 bundles of myrtle branches and running at twilight. So we know the myrtle for Sukkot, right? but here is for Havdalah. They said to him, why do you have this? He said to them, in honor of Shabbat. They said to him, and let one suffice. He answered them, one is corresponding to remember the Shabbat day, to keep it holy, and one is corresponding to observe the Shabbat day, to keep it holy. Two different moments in the Torah that we read about Shabbat, one in Exodus and the other in Deuteronomy. Rabbi Shimon said to his son, see how beloved the mitzvot are to Israel? Their minds were put at ease. So they find comfort when they see this elderly man who is practicing Judaism, who is fulfilling, who is practicing a mitzvah. And I would say that they become a little bit less arrogant because they also see that they can still learn from people that were not in the cave, but still have things to teach them. Because they ask about that, why is this man using two branches, two bundles of branches, and the elder man teaches something to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Elazar. So despite the fact that they were 13 years inside the cave, they still have things to be learned, have things to be known. They do not know everything. I want to stop here because I want to allow you to comment on the story we read and maybe to bring one or two impressions from myself. We have about 10 minutes to finish. So what are your general thoughts about the story we've just read? Just to give you more, a little bit more background information. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is considered to be the father of Jewish mysticism. The Kabbalah started with him, according to the tradition. He is the author of Zohar, the most important book of Jewish mysticism. We know that it's not true, and the Zohar was written much later, 1,000 years later in Spain, but traditionally the authorship of the Zohar is attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So he is considered to be the first Jewish mystic, the father of Jewish mysticism, an important rabbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So how do you see the story of the cave and the consequences and the end of the story? I would love to hear from you before we say goodnight. So Miriam.
It's confusing.
It's confusing. Okay, it's confusing. I'll give you my take on the story, and I don't know if it will be less confusing, but at least you will know what crosses my mind when I read this story. Yes, Yossi.
Well, the way it was a very interesting story, and you cannot take it at face value. So the way I look at it is that this story tells us about that in the Israeli society of the time, maybe there were three groups. The one that, like Yehuda, were the one that assimilated with Roman society. Bar Yochai was what we know today, the Haredim, the extreme orthodoxy. And then you had the third group, which were the plain Jews, who really tilted the soil. So it's really almost a micro approach to society of the time under Roman power. This is how I can explain.
Beautiful reading, Yossi. I agree with you. I think it's very nice. Anyone else? Yes, Barbara.
Well, so you said this is related to Lag BaOmer. You didn't put it together.
Right.
Really.
So just because it's not written here in this legend,
Right.
but there is another legend that connects the death of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai with Lag BaOmer, and tells us that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai has died, according to tradition, on Lag BaOmer, and this is why we connect the two of them. And according to that second legend that I did not bring it here to you, he asked his death to be remembered as a day of joy and happiness, and not as a day of sorrow and grief. So he wanted his death to be a happy day, the day he dies to be remembered as a happy day. One explanation is because he was a mystic and he believed in afterlife and he believed in immortality of the soul. So he thought that death was not an end, is not an end, what is not necessarily something negative. So he asked the day of his death to become a day of celebration and not a day of commemoration. And this is what actually happened. And there are the other legends connected to Lag BaOmer, Rabbi Akiva and Bar Kochva, but here we are concentrating on Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and this story that is the most famous one connected to his character. Okay, so I see the following before we say good night. Judaism is not a religion that promotes isolation. Other religions will say, go to the top of a mountain and stay there and live there forever. The ideal for some religions is for one to isolate themselves from society. But Judaism invites us to live life among people, not inside the cave, but outside the cave. And here I see a criticism against those that believe that the ideal is to be far from society. This is not what we think. We want minyan. We want people to live near to the synagogue, near to the congregation, and to come together to pray. And it is in society that we find the big challenges. It's easy to live by yourself. It's difficult to live with other people that are different from you and find a way to coexist. This is the real challenge, and this is what Judaism expects from us. So I see in this text a very strong critique against the idea of isolation. The ideal of Judaism is to live among people and to find a way to deal with the obstacles and the challenges that are created by the fact that we live together. But Judaism does not see an alternative. Going to an island and living apart from society is not the Jewish way to live. And there are severe consequences
Yeah.
in not being with other people. When you isolate yourself, you lose the possibility, the ability to coexist. You don't know how to face other people. Plowing and sowing is out of this world for people who are not accustomed to live in society. So this is what I read from this legend. It does not mean that praying is bad. It does not mean that studying Torah is bad. But praying and studying Torah should not replace life. It should be part of life. You should plow and pray, sow and study Torah, and not choose one over the other.
Rabbi, what was the point of having them take their clothes off while they were studying Torah and only putting them on when they were praying? How did that?
To save the clothes for all the years.
So the story does not tell us. We can interpret
It says it.
in different ways. I associate it as a condition that of almost dead. They buried themselves as dead people. Maybe to help them to keep their bodies warm during the night, or protect them from the heat during the day in the desert.
The story said that they took the clothes off to keep the clothes from becoming tattered, which means torn, ripped up, and not useful.
To conserve the clothes.
To conserve the clothing.
Okay.
And maybe they felt they had to be covered when they prayed.
Yeah,
Okay.
but this is so abnormal.
Yeah.
And what I think, Rabbi, what you are saying is that the point of the story, that when you live in a cave or you live on top of a mountain, you cannot build society.
Right.
You cannot.
Right.
You become the Zohar is really more of an intellectual venture.
Mm-hmm.
It's so intellectual that very few understand it.
Right.
But you cannot take the Zohar and create a nation.
Right.
And it's really interesting. When you spoke, the image that came in my mind is that now in Israel, we are going through an evolution. An evolution. Society is changing. And for the first time, we see that we are dealing with the issue of orthodoxy. How much do you need to be in a yeshiva as opposed, like you said, go to the army and work? And work. I mean, this is really fascinating. Is that we have so many Jews who live in a Jewish society, but they are so unproductive. So this is what I think is happening today too. They really trying to figure out is staying in a cave will make Israel a fruitful society, or it will break the society. So the story really tells us that we need to go out of the cave, not to stay
Yeah.
in the cave.
You're not going to change them. Forget it.
What do you
It's
mean?
not happening.
You're not going to change what?
The frum who won't come out of the cave and stay in the shul and study and
No.
study. They don't work.
Not
Their
that.
wives go to work.
Not everyone has to. The rabbi and the son, is a metaphor of very few geonim. You know what is a gaon, right? Famous rabbis who brought the laws and the rules, and yes, I understand that. Even Rambam, he was a physician, so he had a job.
Yes, but
So-
there's a lot in Israel that don't have jobs. They have benefactors who give them money.
Correct. Yeah, I think it's a mistake. Because can you imagine how many people we need to live in a cave and study the Torah rather than study Torah and be fruitful too to society?
What I find most fascinating is that a story written 2,000 years ago still teaches us
Yes.
important things for our current situation, for our current society, and the
Absolutely.
challenges that we are facing in the 21st
Yes.
century. This is really fascinating.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful night.
Yeah,
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Rabbi.
much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good night.